The battlefield was silent, but the silence was not peaceful. It was the kind of silence that came only after death had done its work. Smoke rose slowly into the dark purple sky. An ash danced in the hot wind. Alien bodies and broken machines lay scattered across the cracked land like forgotten toys. Among them was one figure who still breathed but barely. She was once a proud alien warrior of the Azraq Empire, tall and fierce, with eyes like burning stars. Her body was crushed. Beneath a piece of her fallen dropship, her legs twisted and useless. Her armor was torn, her face bloodied. But her pride remained. Her name was Kelra. And she had once commanded a full squadron. Now, she couldn't move, couldn't crawl, couldn't scream. Her unit blinked weakly beside her. Out of power, she waited, hoping someone would return for her, hoping her people would come, but no one came. Not her brothers in arms, not her commanders, not even scavengers. To them, she was broken, worthless, better left behind. Kelra clenched her teeth as pain shot up her spine again. The sun was setting now. Casting long shadows over the corpses, she thought it would be her last sunset, and maybe that was fine. She closed her eyes, ready to let go. That's when she heard boots crunching on gravel. Someone was coming. She opened her eyes, blinking against the light. A figure approached through the dust slow, limping, tired. It wasn't an Azraq. It was a human. His armor was dented, blood dried on his side. And one arm hung useless at his side. Yet he moved with purpose. Like a man who still had something to fight for. His name was Corporal Jack Mercer, and he had been separated from his unit during the battle. When he saw her, he stopped. His eyes narrowed. His hand went to his blaster, but then he saw her crushed. Legs, the blood, the pain in her face, and he paused. Kelra expected death, but instead, Jack dropped to one knee. Still holding his blaster low but not aiming, she tried to speak, but her voice came out as a weak cough. "You're still alive," Jack said quietly, more to himself than to her. She stared at him, confused. Why wasn't he killing her? Why wasn't he walking away? "Why are you here, human?" she whispered. Her voice was cracked and full of shame. Jack didn't answer at first. He reached into his pouch and pulled out a small water capsule. Without a word, he lifted her head slightly and held it to her lips. Kelra wanted to refuse, to spit it out, but her body betrayed her. She drank. "I should kill you," she said when she could speak again. Jack gave a weak chuckle. "You're welcome." He looked around, then dragged a broken panel over to shade her from the sun. "Your own people left you," he muttered. Kelra looked away, her jaw tight. "They think I'm useless now," she said. Jack sat down beside her with a sigh. "Then we've got something in common." They stayed like that for a while. Two enemies, alone in the dust. No war cries, no orders, just silence. Night was coming fast, and the cold would be brutal. Jack knew they couldn't stay out in the open. He checked her legs. Both were crushed beyond repair. She wouldn't walk again, not without serious tech. But he couldn't leave her. He couldn't walk away, not after seeing her eyes. Eyes that once held fire, now dimmed by betrayal. "I'm going to carry you," he said suddenly. Kelra blinked. "What?" "You heard me," he said, already cutting straps from his pack to make a sling. "You'll slow me down," she warned. Jack shrugged. "So don't die on me." She looked at him like he was mad. Maybe he was, a human, saving an enemy, risking his life for her. What kind of fool does that? But as he lifted her carefully, painfully, she saw something in his eyes. Not pity, not pride, something else. Honor, maybe, or the simple refusal to let another soul die alone in the dust. As he walked, carrying her weight with every broken step, Kelra rested her head against his back. "You're a fool," she whispered. Jack smiled through the pain. "I've been called worse," he replied, and as they vanished into the night, the wind swept over the battlefield once more, but this time it did not carry the scent of death. It carried the faint echo of something rarer. Hope Kelra had killed humans before. Many of them. She was raised to believe they were nothing. More than dangerous, weak creatures, her empire taught her that humans would betray, lie, and burn everything they touched. She believed it, lived by it, and even trained others to do the same. But now, she was being carried through a burning jungle by one. The same species she was taught to hate. His back was strong, his steps slow but steady. Her paralyzed legs dangled uselessly behind him, tied with scraps of metal and cloth. Jack Mercer grunted with every step. His ribs ached, his injured arm barely worked, and his throat was dry. Still he didn't stop. Not when branches scraped his skin. Not when the ground crumbled beneath him. Not even when his own mind whispered, "She's the enemy. Let her go." The sun disappeared behind thick clouds of ash. The forest was dark and hot. Strange creatures watched them from the trees. Their eyes glowing twice, Jack had to stop and duck when something growled too close, but he held her tighter. Protecting her with his body, Kelra could feel his heartbeat. It was strong, steady, never panicked, and yet she still didn't understand why. She whispered near his ear. Jack didn't answer at first. "Why are you doing this?" She asked again, her voice sharper this time. He stopped near a fallen tree and gently lowered her down. Sweat dripped down his face, his body trembling from exhaustion. "I don't leave people behind," he finally said. "You're not people," she hissed. "You're a human." Jack looked at her with tired eyes. "You're alive," he said. "That's enough for me." Kelra turned her head away, frustrated and confused. Why would he say that? What kind of soldier saves an enemy who can't even fight back? He pulled out his last food ration and broke it in half. Without asking, he handed her a piece. She hesitated. Was it poisoned? But she was too hungry to care. She ate in silence. The taste bland but filling. Night came fast, and the jungle became alive with alien sounds. Jack found a cave barely big enough to hide them. He set Kelra down gently, using broken leaves to cover the entrance. Then he sat beside her, weapon in hand. Watching the shadows dance outside, she looked at his hands, bruised and cut from climbing. There was dirt on his face, blood on his shirt, and pain in his eyes. Yet not once had he complained. Not once had he cursed her, even though she was dead weight, even though she could be a trap. "You're not what I expected," she whispered. He didn't look at her. "Neither are you. I'm a killer," she said. "A weapon that failed, maybe," Jack said. "But even broken weapons can protect something," his words made her chest feel tight, not because they were kind, but because they felt real. She had lost everything: her squad, her legs, her honor. And yet this human carried her as if she still mattered. A loud shriek echoed through the jungle. Both Jack and Kelra froze. It wasn't a beast, it was a drone. One of the Azrek's own scouts, her own kind, was searching, but not to save her. Jack pressed his hand over her mouth gently, signaling silence. The blue light of the drone passed over the cave. It paused, scanned, then flew away. Kelra breathed out slowly once it was gone. "They're not here for me," she said. "Bitterly no," Jack agreed. "They're making sure you're dead." Something broke inside her at those words. She had fought for her people, bled for them, given her everything. And now she was nothing to them, not even worth collecting. "I was ready to die," she whispered in the darkness. "I know," Jack replied, "but I wasn't ready to let you." She turned toward him, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "You're insane," she said. "Probably," he replied, "but you're still alive." "Aren't you?" They sat in silence again, the human and the alien, both wounded, both unwanted. Yet somehow, together, they felt less alone. Before sleep came, Kelra said something she never thought she would. "Thank you, Jack." He blinked, surprised. "No need to thank me yet," he muttered. "We still have a long way to go." And with that, he leaned against the wall. Keeping his blaster close, she watched him through half-closed eyes. The enemy who had become her only hope, the one who carried her through hell when no one else would. Kelra, the warrior who hated humans, now rested on the back of one, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like a monster. She felt human. The jungle was alive with whispers. Leaves rustled even when no wind passed. Vines hung low like waiting fingers, and thick roots curled from the ground like sleeping serpents. Everything in that place seemed to be watching them, hating them. Waiting to strike, Jack Mercer pushed forward, his muscles aching with every step. Kelra was tied securely to his back, her weight pressing down like a reminder of every mile he had walked. His armor was nearly falling apart, his boots soaked with mud and alien slime. But he didn't stop. Not for the pain, not for the fear, not even when he heard low growls in the distance. Kelra could feel his labored breathing. She knew he was breaking, slowly but surely. But he didn't speak of pain, not once. Every time she tried to say, "Leave me here," he only said, "Shut up and hold on." The jungle tried to slow them twice. Roots tripped him, sending them both crashing to the ground once. A thick vine whipped across his chest and cut deep into his skin. He didn't cry out, only gritted his teeth and stood again. Kelra hated this place. The thick air made her feel like drowning. She couldn't feel her legs at all now, and she feared the damage might be permanent. But worse than the pain was the silence between them. They had not spoken in hours. Jack focused only on survival, on moving forward, on finding some kind of shelter or signal. Kelra, once a proud leader, now had nothing to offer but silence. And shame. "Stop," she finally said, her voice weak but firm. He ignored her. "Stop." She repeated louder. "We need to rest." Jack finally dropped to one knee under a large moss-covered tree, leaned forward, and let her slide off gently onto the soft ground. His arms shook from exhaustion, his face pale under the grime. Kelra looked at him. This human who had carried her through death and darkness. "You're killing yourself," she said softly. He shrugged. "Better than leaving you behind." She stared at him, confused and angry. "Why do you keep saying that? You don't know me, human. You don't owe me anything." Jack leaned back against the tree, pulling off his gloves to look at his blistered hands. "I know what it feels like to be left behind," he said quietly. "That's enough." A strange silence fell between them, heavier than before. Kelra wanted to ask more, but didn't. There was something in his voice that said, "Don't dig." Suddenly a sound cracked through the jungle, a sharp, clicking noise. Both of them froze. Jack raised his blaster, scanning the thick vines. In branches, Kelra tensed, her instincts screaming even if her body couldn't move. From the underbrush, a creature stepped out. It had long limbs, glowing yellow eyes, and skin that shifted color like liquid glass. Its mouth opened sideways, revealing rows of small, sharp teeth. It was a jungle predator, silent, fast, deadly. Jack didn't wait. He fired a warning shot into the air. The creature didn't flinch. Instead, it hissed and darted forward. Faster than Jack could aim again, Kelra shouted, "Left, aim left." Jack turned and fired, grazing the creature's leg. It screamed, spun around, and vanished into the shadows. Silence returned, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before something worse. "We can't stay here," Jack said quickly. "They hunt in packs," Kelra whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "Then let's not be here when the rest arrive," Jack replied, already lifting her again. They moved faster now. Branches whipped against them. Thorns scratched their skin. A strange mist crept through the trees, making it hard to breathe. The jungle didn't want them. There it wanted them, broken, bleeding, lost. Finally, Jack spotted a natural cave hidden under a thick curtain of vines. He pushed through and crawled inside with Kelra on his back. The space was tight, dark, smelled of damp stone, but it was shelter. He placed her gently against the wall. His body collapsed beside her moments later, completely drained. "Why does this place feel alive?" Kelra asked softly. Jack didn't answer right away. He stared at the ceiling, then said, "Maybe because it is, this jungle. It doesn't want us here." Kelra felt something stir in her chest, a strange emotion, not fear, not anger, something else, trust, maybe, or the start of it. "You listened back there," she said after a pause. "When I said to aim left," Jack turned his head toward her and gave a tired smile. "You've got good instincts," he said, "even if your people don't deserve them." She laughed, just a small, broken laugh. It hurt, but it felt real. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. They were not allies, not yet, but in this jungle that hated them both, they were no longer just enemies. They were Survivors, asterisk, the cave was cold, damp, and silent. Only the sound of water dripping from the rocks filled the space. Jack sat near the entrance, keeping watch, his blaster ready in case the jungle monsters returned. Behind him, Kelra lay still, her eyes half open, her breathing slow and weak. She had stopped speaking hours ago. Her body was failing, and so was her spirit. Her skin had gone pale, her forehead was wet with sweat, and her voice had faded to a whisper. Jack looked back at her, worry crawling across his face. She looked nothing like the fierce warrior he first found. She looked tired, not just from pain, but from everything. He crawled over to her, placed his hand on her forehead, and felt the fever burning her from inside. "Damn it," he muttered. "You're getting worse." Kelra didn't react. Her eyes were distant, staring at the ceiling of the cave like she wasn't really there anymore. Jack shook her gently. "Hey, stay with me." She blinked slowly. "Why?" she whispered. "Why should I?" He frowned. "Because you're not dead." She laughed weakly, a broken sound. "I can't feel my legs. My own people left me. I'm useless." Jack clenched his fists. "That's not true. You're still breathing, still thinking, still fighting even if you don't realize it." Kelra turned her head away, tears collecting in her eyes. "You don't get it. She said I was a warrior, not a burden. Now I'm just a broken thing." Jack leaned closer, his voice soft but sharp. "You think I haven't felt that way? You think I've never been left behind, bleeding in the dirt?" He sat down hard beside her, pulling up his sleeve to show a jagged scar across his forearm. "They left me once too," he said. "Called me a coward when I refused to bomb a village. I disobeyed orders to save innocent lives. They branded me disloyal." Kelra stared at the scar, silent. Jack leaned back, his eyes on the cave ceiling now. "But you know what kept me alive? Not pride, not revenge. It was the thought that maybe, someday, I'd find someone who'd understand." He looked at her, eyes burning, and I think I just did. Her lip trembled. "No one ever came back for me before," she whispered. "I waited so long." Jack nodded. "Well, I'm not leaving. You're stuck with me now." They stayed quiet for a while, the weight of their pain filling the air. Then Jack stood up and began gathering moss, vines, and broken bark. Kelra watched him with confusion. "What are you doing?" "Making a stretcher," he said. "I can't carry you forever, not with your fever climbing. We need to move, find help, or you won't last another night." Kelra swallowed, her throat dry. "You'll die out there." Jack gave a crooked smile. "Maybe. But I'd rather die trying to save you than sit here watching you fade away." She stared at him, this human soldier, this enemy who had become the only warmth left in her world. Something inside her shifted, a crack in the armor of hopelessness. When the stretcher was ready, Jack gently lifted her onto it. She bit down on her lip, trying not to cry out from the pain. "I'm not light," she whispered. Jack chuckled. "I've carried worse." With vines tied to his shoulders, he began dragging the stretcher out of the cave. The jungle greeted them with buzzing insects, heat, and the ever-present eyes of unseen creatures. Every step was harder than the last. Jack's body screamed for rest. But he didn't stop. Kelra watched him from the stretcher, guilt twisting in her chest. She wanted to tell him to leave her again, but now she couldn't, not because of fear, but because somewhere deep inside, she didn't want to die anymore. The path ahead was long and full of danger. They had no map, no supplies, no allies, but they had something stronger than any weapon. A strange bond built through fire and survival as night approached. Jack finally found a small waterfall beside a thick tree. He set her down gently and filled a cracked metal cup with water. She drank slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. "You're insane," she said again. Jack smiled. "You keep saying that. It's probably true." She looked up at the stars through the tree branches. They were the same stars she had once looked at from a warship's window, but now they felt different, less cold, less distant. "You never told me why you saved me," she said softly. Jack leaned against the tree, breathing heavily because no one else would. He said, "And you deserved better." Kelra closed her eyes. For the first time since the crash, her heartbeat slowed. Not from weakness, but from peace. She wasn't ready to die anymore, not while he was still fighting for her. The sun burned above the treetops as Jack dragged the stretcher across the uneven dirt path. Kelra lay quietly on the rough bedding of vines and bark, her skin pale, her breathing slow but steady. For the first time in days, they heard something. New radio static, faint, crackling through the wind. Jack froze, ears alert, and slowly reached into his chest pocket. His old emergency beacon was blinking. Just barely a signal. Someone was nearby. Maybe human, maybe friendly, maybe hope. Kelra opened her eyes, her voice soft. "What is it?" "Signal," Jack said quickly. "Could be a patrol, search party, or evac team." He didn't waste time turning toward the sound, cutting through bushes and overgrown weeds. Every step was painful, his legs shaking, shoulders sore from days of carrying her. But his heart beat faster, now not from fear, but from something rare, a chance, after 20 minutes of fighting the jungle. They saw it, a clearing, wide and dusty, with a silver structure in the center. A temporary base camp, walls built from landing pods, and a human flag fluttering in the breeze. Jack nearly cried. "We made it," he whispered. Kelra looked. Too weak to speak, but her hand grabbed his. A silent plea, "Please, don't leave me." Wave leaves. Jack stepped out into the open, waving his free hand. "Hey, I've got a wounded soldier here requesting medical support," he shouted. 3 humans in combat gear ran out, weapons raised. Jack held his hands up. "I'm unarmed, she's injured. I need help. She's Azric, but she's not a threat." The soldiers looked confused, then one of them barked into his cums. Within minutes, more troops surrounded them. And a captain in a black uniform stepped forward. He looked down at Kelra. His eyes narrowed, then up at Jack. "You brought an enemy into our camp." The captain said coldly, "She's dying," Jack replied. "And she saved my life more than once." The captain nodded to his men. "Separate them." 2 soldiers grabbed Jack, pulled him back roughly. "Hey, she can't move. She needs help," he shouted, struggling, but they didn't listen. Kelra was lifted onto a hover stretcher, her eyes wide with fear as she reached toward Jack. "Jack," she cried. "Don't let them." One soldier shoved something in her mouth to silence her. "Stop," Jack yelled. "What are you doing?" "She's a prisoner of war," the captain replied. "You're going to be questioned for your actions." Jack's face twisted in disbelief. "I saved her. She was abandoned. She's no threat to anyone now." But they didn't care. They threw Jack into a makeshift cell, nothing more than a crate with steel walls. They left him there, alone, with nothing but anger in his heart. Hours passed, or maybe it was a full day. Jack sat with his back to the wall, replaying every moment in his head, the way she trusted him, the way she held on, the way she started to believe again. And now she was gone, dragged into another prison, maybe worse than the jungle. Footsteps echoed outside, and the door opened with a harsh hiss. The captain entered, arms crossed. "You crossed the line." "Soldier," he said coldly, "you carried. The enemy fed her, protected her. You're lucky we don't charge you with treason." Jack stood slowly, his voice low but steady. "Then do it," he said. "But you leave her alone. She didn't deserve what happened to her." The captain stared at him, silent, then sneered. "You always were soft. She's an alien, Mercer, nothing more. She's just a tool their kind used against us." Jack stepped forward. Fists clenched. "She was left behind by her own kind," he growled. "She was treated like garbage, same way you're treating me. You want to call me soft? Fine, but I'd rather be soft and human than cold like you." The captain didn't speak again. He left the cell and slammed the door shut. Later that night, a shadow appeared at the back of the crate. A quiet knock on the panel. Jack moved toward it cautiously, and a soft voice whispered, "Mercer, it's Ellie medic team. She's still alive, but they're planning to transfer her off-world as an enemy specimen." Jack's chest tightened. "What?" "She's in isolation," Ellie whispered. "They're calling it a science order, but it's not. They're going to experiment on her." Jack's blood boiled. He gritted his teeth and whispered, "Help me get out." Ellie passed him a small key, through a slot on the floor. "You have one shot," she whispered. "If they catch you, you'll vanish too." Jack held the key in his trembling hand. His body was broken. His name now meant nothing. But she had called his name when they took her, and that was enough. He slipped the key into the lock and turned it slowly. The door clicked open. The rescue had turned into an ambush, but this time, he would be the one launching the rescue, and nothing, not war, not orders, not fear would stop him from finding her again. Kelra lay on a cold metal table, her body strapped down with thick bands across her chest, arms, and hips. Dim white lights flickered above her, casting shadows on the surgical tools nearby. She could hear voices outside the glass, scientists discussing her as if she were an object, a thing, a test subject, a weapon to be taken apart and studied. Her limbs still didn't move, but something inside her stirred. It wasn't strength or healing, it was anger. A slow, burning fire in her chest, building quietly with each passing second. "Subject remains semi-conscious," said a voice through the wall. "She's more resistant than expected. Prepare to open the cranial panel. We'll study." Her neural network first, Kelra's fingers twitched. It was small, barely a movement, but it was something. Her mind reached out instinctively, not with her body but with her thoughts. Long ago, before she became a warrior, she trained in telepathy, a rare gift among her kind, but one she had sealed away. Now, that door opened again, as if pain had. Turned the key, she closed her eyes and focused. "Jack," she reached out in the dark. Through walls, through pain, through distance. "Jack, if you can hear me, I need you." For a moment there was silence, then a flash, an image in her mind, his face, dirty, tired, eyes full of fire. She had found him. Meanwhile, Jack moved like a shadow through the base. His body ached with every step, but his focus was sharp thanks to Ellie. He had a stolen map, a stolen passcode, and 15 minutes before the next patrol. He followed the hall to a locked chamber labeled Alien Specimen. Restricted, his heart pounded. He swiped the card, and the door hissed open. There she was, on the table, barely breathing. Surrounded by wires and tools, rage surged through him. "You bastards," he whispered. He ran to her side, pulling the straps loose one by one. Kelra's eyes opened slowly, her voice weak but clear. "You came." "Of course I did," Jack said. "Let's get out of here." Alarms suddenly blared across the facility. Jack spun around, blaster drawn. "We've got to move now," Kelra closed her eyes again, focusing this time. She wasn't calling, she was commanding. Her power surged outward like a pulse across the base. Lights flickered and screens cracked. Every guard who approached the lab felt a sudden pressure in their minds, like an invisible force screaming. Some dropped their weapons. Others clutched their heads and fell to their knees. Jack stared at Kelra in awe. "What? What are you doing?" She opened her eyes, and they glowed faint blue. "Finishing what they started," she said coldly. Her body still didn't fully work, but her mind had become her new weapon, with Jack's help. She sat upright. Together they moved through the hallways, one guarding, one guiding. When guards blocked their way, Kelra focused, and the soldiers fell unconscious. When locks barred their path, Jack blasted them open. They were unstoppable, one human, one alien. Escaping a trap designed to break them both, they reached the hangar, where a single scout ship waited. Jack pulled her into the pilot's seat, quickly strapping her in, then jumped into the co-pilot's chair, punching buttons like a man possessed. "I've never flown an Azrek ship," he muttered. "Just touch the circle glyphs," Kelra whispered. "Let your fingers follow the hum." He did, and the ship roared to life. Turrets outside turned, preparing to fire. But Kelra pushed her mind out against ending. False signals to the defense system. For one perfect second, the guns hesitated. It was all Jack needed. He pulled the controls back hard, and the ship shot into the sky. Lasers flew past them, explosions shaking the hull, but they didn't stop, not until the clouds swallowed them, not until the stars welcomed them home. Inside the ship, Jack leaned back, breathing heavily. Kelra sat beside him, exhausted but smiling. "You're crazy," she said. "Yeah," he replied. "But you like crazy now, don't you?" She laughed weakly, then reached out and took his hand. "Thank you, Jack," she said softly, "for not giving up on me." He squeezed her fingers. "You've saved yourself." "Kelra," he said, "I just reminded you how the stars stretched. Out in front of them, endless and free, and behind them, a world that had tried to destroy them both, but they had survived. Together, her strength had returned. Her power had awakened, and now her rage had a purpose not to destroy, but to protect the only person who ever saw her as more than a weapon." The stolen Azrek scout ship floated in deep space, far away from war zones and military outposts. Inside the small cabin, Jack sat beside Kelra, adjusting the ship's controls with one hand and sipping from a recycled water pack with the other. They had escaped the base, dodged patrols, crossed the outer rings of human territory. But Jack knew they couldn't run forever. He glanced at the warning light blinking on the console. Low fuel. Failing systems. They needed to land. Soon Kelra, still weak but healing, sat quietly wrapped in an emergency blanket. Her eyes no longer burned with anger, but with thought. She had changed, not just in body but in spirit. "Where are we going?" she asked quietly. Jack looked at her. "Somewhere quiet. No armies, no flags, no orders. Just a place where no one tells us who to hate." She nodded slowly, then said, "They'll come for you, you know. You helped the enemy, Jack." Smiled without humor. "They already call me traitor. Doesn't really matter what they call me anymore." Kelra looked at him for a long time, and said something she'd never told anyone, not even her own people. "When I was young, I had a brother. He died in our first war against humans." Jack stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I hated your kind because I thought you killed him, but now I realize war killed him, not humans." Jack placed a hand gently over hers. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. She looked at him with shining eyes. "You remind me of him. Stubborn, foolish, kind." He chuckled. "Well, 2 out of 3s. Not bad." A small alert flashed on the screen. A signal: human ships in range. Jack leaned forward, adjusting the scanners. "Damn," he whispered. "They found us." Kelra gritted her teeth. "Trying to sit up fully, then we fight," she said. Jack looked at her and shook his head. "No, not this time. We're not going to die fighting. We're going to live." He opened the comm channel and sent a message. "This is Corporal Jack Mercer," he said calmly. "I'm surrendering peacefully." But not alone. There was a long silence, then a reply crackled through. "Jack Mercer, you're under arrest for desertion, enemy collaboration, and unauthorized use of classified equipment." Jack sighed, figured they were surrounded. Quickly, 3 warships, dozens of Marines. He raised his hands as they boarded. But before they could grab Kelra, he stepped in front of her. "She's with me," he said. "You want someone to blame? Blame me." The Marines looked unsure. Kelra, still sitting, spoke firmly. "He's no traitor. He saved a life your army wanted to throw away." She lifted her chin, showing her scars, her twisted legs, her broken pride. "But this human gave me something no one else did. A second chance." The commander frowned, confused and uncomfortable. "This doesn't change what he did." Jack looked at them, unafraid. "Then call me traitor," he said. "But remember, I didn't abandon someone in the dirt." He turned to Kelra, his voice softer now. "No matter what happens, I'm glad I found you." She reached out and touched his hand. "You didn't find me," she said. "You carried me." The two were separated. Jack, taken into custody. Kelra moved to medical isolation, but word of what they did began to spread. Some called him mad. Some called him a disgrace. But others called him brave. Months passed, and Jack stood before a military tribunal. His uniform was torn, his beard overgrown, but his eyes remained strong. "You aided the enemy." The judge said. Jack replied, "I saved someone no one else would." There was silence in the courtroom then. Footsteps echoed as a figure entered the chamber. Kelra, dressed in neutral colors, walked with 2 cybernetic leg skiffs from Jack's stolen tech. Every eye turned to her, some with hatred, some with shock. She stood beside Jack and looked the judges in the eye. "You see a traitor?" she said. "I see a brother." Gasps filled the room. She continued, "You see a war criminal? I see the only soul who chose mercy over madness." The judges whispered among themselves, unsure how to proceed. Jack leaned toward her and whispered, "You didn't have to come," she smiled. "I promised I'd walk again you." Gave me the strength to keep that promise. Later that night, away from cameras and orders, Jack sat on a quiet bench under the stars. Kelra joined him, her steps smooth but still adjusting. "Where do we go now?" she asked. Jack looked up at the sky, anywhere but backward. And as the stars blinked gently above, the human and the alien sat side by side. Enemies no longer, not friends, not lovers, something deeper. They had survived pain, war, betrayal. And in the end, all that mattered was one simple truth. They had chosen each other when no one else would.